Welcome horror fans, we're back with another video. As you can see, it's Saturday, so we're now in for two good stories here. It's a real treat for you. We're going to get started on it. Hope you're all enjoying your weekend and you've had a nice relaxed week. I have seen ghosts my whole life. When I was a little girl, my parents sent me to a shrink, but no matter what drug or counsel I was given, they never went away. Out of every ghost I have seen throughout my life, there is one I will never forget. The Pointing Girl. It was Valentine's Day 1998 and I was 16. By this point I had learnt to remain calm whenever I saw something, no matter how chilling. That's what I did when I saw her. I was waiting for the school bus while she stood across the street. She was a small girl with long blonde curls, wearing a cute polka dot dress. If it wasn't for the fact her neck was wide open and she wasn't creepily staring and pointing at me, I might have found her adorable. At school, the first half of the day went as usual. I walked to class by myself, I sat by myself, and then I ate lunch by myself. But something new happened before last period. I found a Valentine's Day card in my locker. At first I thought it was a joke, but it was signed Your Secret Admirer, JB. I knew right away it was Jerry Bronson. He would always smile at me and I would always blush. During last period I shared a class with Jerry, so I sat next to him. To my surprise, he talked to me. Soon we were laughing and gossiping. It was mostly about our new creepy substitute teacher, Mr. Banks. He had a bit of a habit of wheezing whenever he was happy. We found it hilarious. It was nearing the end of class when I spotted her again. Through the window I saw her on the football field. She was shambling towards me with her arm outstretched in front of her, pointing at me. Chills went down my spine and I had to look away. When I got home I told my parents all about my day and even showed them the card. They were both so happy for me. I finally felt normal. Unfortunately, the feeling didn't last. Before bed, while closing my curtains, there she was again, standing in our drive, pointing at me. I quickly pulled them shut and rushed under my covers. Later that night, I was awoken by the sound of shuffling. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and that's when I saw her. She was standing in the corner of the room, pointing. I sat up in shock as I realised what she was doing. She was pointing at me. She was pointing under my bed. Then I heard the wheezing. I ran screaming out of my room. Not long after I found myself on the street watching as the police dragged Mr. Jonathan Banks out of my house. That's when I stopped being afraid of the dead, but living are far more terrifying. I hesitated when they offered me the job as a McDonald's night shift manager. I'd already worked at the store for 6 months, but that was during the day. I rarely worked after dark, and I'd talked to co-workers who were super busy, understaffed, with rowdy customers through them shifts. Those were the general complaints, and I figured that was why the night shift manager position had such a high turnover rate. In 6 months there had been 4 new managers, and every single one of them had quit. The last one to leave us was Jesse, a guy who used to work the afternoons and would always come in high. He did it so often that I assumed that was just how he was. And then one day he came in sober and I thought, shit, I see why they hired him. It didn't surprise me too much when he accepted the promotion. The one benefit of the position was there was no one else up your arse. No mystery shoppers, the general manager's at home fast asleep, and you could pretend the ice cream machine's broken all you want. No one's gonna call you on it. What did surprise me was when he quit. Barely a week in. He didn't even put in a notice. He walked out of the store in the middle of a shift and never came back. His final paycheck gathered dust in the back office, and no one ever managed to get in touch with him. And that's when they offered me the position. I had my doubts, but I'd just turned 18. I had no idea what I wanted to do in my life, and the pay was nearly double my salary as a regular crew member. I took the job, underwent about a week of training, and the next thing I knew, I was in charge of a place from 11 till 7. 5 nights a week. It wasn't bad for the first 3 hours. I would have an extra work in the kitchen and another one up front to take orders and hand food out on the window. They both left at 3, and then the store was empty except for me and Miriam. The only cook in the kitchen, Miriam, was a short, quiet, middle-aged woman who had been working in the kitchen for more than a decade. She didn't speak English too well, but she understood it just fine. It was around 4 o'clock one Sunday night when I understood why Jessie left. The line outside was gone and the parking lot was empty. The floor and the tables in the lobby were spotless, untouched since the janitor left. The only sound was the constant hum of the fryers. I knew I still had things to do. I still needed to reboot the computer system, count the registers, but I took a moment to stand by the front counter, looking out into the lobby that closed each night at 7. I wasn't looking at anything in particular, but my eyes settled on the reflection in the window, and I saw something move. Underneath one of the booth tables, my eyesight wasn't great, so I leaned over the counter and squinted until I knew I wasn't imagining things. It was a girl's legs, sticking straight out horizontally from beneath the table. She had snow-white shoes, the type nurses wear. Her legs were bare, but I couldn't see anything above the kneecap. The back of her heels rested on the floor, and her toes pointed towards the ceiling. Then the toes of her shoes started to sway back and forth, like she was listening to music. I watched her for a moment. Was she hurt? Was this a prank? People had walked into the lobby after closing before, looking to order or use the bathroom, but I'd never seen any of them act like this. Usually they'd come right up to the front counter. I'd say sorry, the lobby's closed, and that would be the end of it. But this... "Hey!" I shouted. "Lobby's closed!" My voice echoed through the building, and as soon as I yelled it, the legs froze in place. For a moment they both lay on the floor completely still. The girl under the table drew them in close, one at a time, until they were far enough within the booth that I could no longer see them. I figured she was getting up, and I waited for her to show herself, but she never did. I shouted again, "I know you're there!" But nothing happened. I sighed, lowered my headset around my neck, and walked out into the lobby. She was going to have to acknowledge me, whether she wanted to or not. But when I turned the corner and made it to the booth, no one was underneath. I looked under the other tables and saw no one. I took a wide look, scanning the whole lobby. Besides Miriam in the kitchen, the place was empty. I stood there for a while, my feet frozen to the floor. Eventually I sighed and walked back towards the counter, trying not to dwell on the fact that I'd imagined a pair of legs under the table for at least a full minute. I wasn't going crazy, I was just tired. I put the headset back on, and when I was sure no one had pulled into the drive-thru, I double-checked the entrances to make sure the doors were all locked. They already were. If there really was a little girl hiding somewhere in the store, which there wasn't, then she would have been hiding for at least the past 5 hours. That was ridiculous. I would have noticed her before now. I took another passing glance into the lobby as I walked back around the counter and paused. In the reflection of the glass I saw one of the white shoes now lying on the floor. I couldn't see anyone else, no one under the booth. I turned around to get Miriam's attention. Would she see this too? But she wasn't in the kitchen anymore. She must have gone to the stockroom for supplies. I turned back around trying to get the best angle for reflection, but from behind the counter I could only see shadows below the table, and of course the shoe, lying beside it. A moment later a small pale hand reached out from the darkness, grabbed the shoe and pulled it back under the table without a sound. I almost forgot to breathe. I stared at that reflection for an eternity, waiting for something to poke out again, for some other sign that this was real. I don't know how long it took for me to realise the phone was ringing. Miriam called my name from the office. When I turned around, she was walking over to me, the still ringing landline phone. I gave another look towards the reflection in the window before taking the phone, and allowed myself to relax when asking. I saw nothing. It's late, I'm exhausted, I'm not going crazy. I thanked Miriam and answered the call. I didn't expect much at this time of night. No well-intentioned person would ever call us. It was usually a mistake, some kids pulling a prank, or someone who wasn't sure if we were open 24/7 and wanted to call first, before they drove all the way here. But I knew from the moment I heard the caller's voice that this was different. Help. Please help me. A young soft voice trembled on the line. A little girl. My eyes drifted back across the lobby to a reflection in the window. Who is this? I'm stuck, she said. I didn't see anything unusual near the booth this time. I'm stuck under the table. Where are you? I asked, except I knew exactly where she was. Help me get out, she continued, as if she hadn't heard me. I'm stuck. I can't get out. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up and my vision felt hyper-focused. Where once the reflection was blurry, I could see it now with perfect clarity. Nothing happened though. Nothing moved from under the table, but the voice on the phone kept begging me for help. Please, sir, I've been stuck here for so long. I almost hung up the phone right there. If I had, I think I would have pretended nothing had happened, and if the phone rang again, I would have answered it. But this isn't the sort of thing anyone could ignore, and I had this feeling crawling through my skin that I could hang up the phone as much as I wanted. She wasn't going to stop calling. I went back into the lobby. I didn't walk any slower than usual, but it seemed to take forever to make it to the booth. I kept thinking about Jesse, how he'd suddenly disappeared without an explanation. I crouched down and looked under the table, and just like last time, nobody was there. I gave a shaky sigh of relief. The voice on the phone felt so fake now. It was an obvious prank caller, one who happened to have picked the best possible time to mess with me. Nice one, arsehole, I said on the phone, and for once I managed to cut the speaker off. Don't call this place again. But I can see you now, she said, sounding honestly confused. I'm right next to you. You're wearing a red and black uniform and a visit. Yeah, obviously, I said. If this was a prank caller, they needed to know the jig was up. This is McDonald's. We all dress like that. And your eyes are brown, and you don't have a name tag, and you have a cut on your right hand. Her descriptions kept going, to the point where she was describing the way I was crouching down, to the shape of my nose, to the trembling of my hands. I looked at the window again, trying to see past my own reflection and into the parking lot outside. Something's watching me from outside, I told myself. But I was wrong. The reflection was all I needed to see. In it was a girl's face, peeking out an inch or two from under the table. She stared right at me, nearly an arm's length away, her lips moving in sync with the words I heard through the phone. I jerked away from her, stumbling back against a chair. I dropped the phone on the floor, and I could still hear the pitch of her voice from it, but no sound whatsoever emerged from under the booth itself. There was nothing there. Nothing but the floor tiles and the support beams for the table. I looked back into the glass, and I could still see her there, clear as day, looking up at me with her wide black eyes. Her mouth moved soundlessly, but she didn't move any closer. I grabbed the phone and ran back behind the counter. My heart pounded in my chest, my throat, my head. I struggled to breathe. I looked back at the window, and there she was again, watching me with her head poked out of the booth. She frowned, and dark red tears started dripping down her face. I placed the phone back up to my ears and heard her again. Why'd you leave? I thought you were going to help me. I'm stuck, I can't get out. She kept going, and I listened, growing sicker in the stomach as she started to scream. Please, I've been down here for so long. I was snapped out of it by Miriam calling my name from the kitchen. I turned around to see her watching me with narrowed eyes. Are you okay? For a moment I had no idea how to answer that. I looked back at the window and saw nothing, but there was no way in hell I'd imagined all that. I placed the phone up to my ear and heard a girl screaming again. It was almost comforting. She was real. I could hear her. I told Miriam about the girl under the table and her voice on the phone, and I must have been talking too fast because she clearly couldn't understand me. So I handed the phone to her and told her to listen. Miriam put the phone to her ear. She listened for about 2 seconds, then calmly ended the phone call, placed the phone face down on the table counter. "Demon girl," she said. "What?" She repeated herself slowly, making sure she pronounced it right. "Demon girl," she said. "Lives under the table, don't let her touch you, you'll be fine." And with that, she returned to cleaning the grill, humming to herself. My headset dinged and I heard a car pulling up to the drive-through speaker. I raised my hand to the button on my headset to take the order, but my fingers stopped a few inches away. I looked at the girl's face through the window again. She glared at me, never blinking, never looking away. "Hello," said the customer. But taking his order was the last thing I wanted to do. My palms were sweating, the room was spinning, and most of all I felt sick. Sick to my stomach. "Anyone there?" the customer asked. "Hello?" I took off my headset, walked out the door, and I never stepped foot in that building again. Well, I sure hope you enjoyed that story. If you made it to the end, well done you. If you want to, a like, a comment, subscribe, they're all appreciated. Without further ado, I'll see you on Wednesday's video. Have a good day.